Good morning everyone and welcome to all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of Northamptonshire Executive, including all those watching the meeting via our live stream on YouTube. Members are reminded, can you keep your microphones muted unless you are invited to speak? Thank you. First item on the agenda are apologies for absence.
Thank you very much, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Jason Smithers, Leader of the Council, Mark Rowley, also from officers Adele Wiley, Janice Scotts, Anne-Marie Dodds, David Watts and Guy Holloway. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Agenda item 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 3rd of August 2023 and also the 17th of August 2023. So the minutes of the meetings held on the 3rd of August are set out on pages 5 to 9 of the agenda pack, and the minutes of the meeting held on the 17th of August are set out on pages 11 to 32 of the agenda pack. Are there any comments in respect of their accuracy? No. Please may I have a mover and a seconder to approve both sets of the minutes. Thank you, Councillor Scott Edwards. Mover and Councillor Brackenbury, thank you. All in favour of the... Thank you. Agenda item 3, members' declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from our members? Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. It's another interest that in my other place of work, I may have attended meetings where items on today's agenda will have been discussed, but that was in a note-taking capacity, and come here without a particular view. Prejudice, that's the word.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pentland. Okay, agenda item 4, notification of requests to address the meeting. So I can confirm that we have received requests to address the meeting in relation to the following items. So item 5, performance indicators, we have Councillor Anne Lee. Item 6, bus service improvement plan plus BSIP plus funding. We have Councillors Dorothy Maxwell, Councillor Anne Lee and Councillor Lynn Buckingham. Item 7, Kettering Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. We have Councillor Anne Lee. Item 8, Hackney Carriage Dezoning, Hackney Carriage Bylaws and Hackney Carriage Number Limits. We have Councillor Dorothy Maxwell and Mr Neil Riley. Item 9, Northamptonshire Greenway Strategy. We have Councillors Ross Armour, Councillor Dorothy Maxwell and Councillor Lynn Buckingham. Item 10, Kettering Artificial Pitch, Lease and Investment, Councillor Ross Armour. Item 11, Sustainable Modes of Travel to School Strategy. We have Councillor Dorothy Maxwell and Lynn Buckingham. Item 12, Chief Principal Social Workers Annual Report, no speakers. Item 13, no speakers. Item 15, Budget Forecast, Councillor Anne Lee and Councillor Lynn Buckingham. No other members, thank you. Bear with me one moment while I just sign the minutes. Thank you. Item 5, Performance Indicator Report for the period for June 2023. So I'd like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting, and Councillor Lee, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be long. I just wanted to point out the implications of the delay in planning applications being processed. It has drastic consequences for the people affected by a planning application that is processed very well with a long delay. And we have, of course, one very famous big planning application at the moment that has been taken out of the council's hands, and it's now being decided by the inspectorate. But there is a charity in Kettering that wanted to build a sheltered housing, a sheltered accommodation, and it's been delayed for years because of the delays in the planning application. So I wanted to point that out. And then my second and last point, on page 46, we see that 165 children were missing from education at the end of July 2023. That number does not seem to be going down. If anything, it's gone up by 62 children. In previous months, we heard that new members of staff would be recruited and trained to tackle this, but the trend is still going up. And it's a cause for concern, so I really wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I would like to now invite Councillor Lloyd Bundy, Executive Member for Finance and Transformation, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm sure that colleagues around the table will want to comment on their own KPIs and also on the 2 points that Councillor Lee has mentioned, either in person today or outside the meeting. This Period 4 report includes some KPIs that are reported quarterly but 1 month in arrears. So some KPIs in public health, waste services and information governance are reported for the first time this financial year. In this period, of the KPIs with a target set, 23 indicators are on or exceeding target, 5 indicators are within tolerance of target, and 9 indicators are performing below target. There are 11 indicators that have missing data, and some of these missing data indicators are due to the change in software systems and will be reported in future months. For those KPIs where polarity of direction of travel has been determined, performance has improved for 25 indicators and deteriorated for 9. If we analyse the indicators by our key commitments, they show that the greener sustainable environment is exceeding target, better, brighter futures and safe and thriving places. The commitments are performing well with 3/4 of the targets above and the rest on target. Modern public services and active fulfilled lives show a more balanced picture with the same or similar amount of underperforming and overperforming targets. And with that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation in paragraph 3.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. So I'd like to now invite members to debate from the floor. So I have Councillor David Brackenbury. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I welcome the performance indicators. For good or ill, they provide a valuable snapshot and a bit of analysis as to the actual what is going on behind the scenes in the council. So I also welcome Councillor Lee, the first part of her her comments a few moments ago, referring to some planning matters. Absolutely, the major application which she speaks of has been taken into the planning advisory, planning inspectorate in Bristol. I beg your pardon, I got my agencies wrong there, and will be determined by them. This is because the applicant filed for a non-determination. This was actually allowed by Northamptonshire Council very much on our own legal advice. It will still be determined by the Planning Inspectorate. The council, if this had gone to committee and if the application had been refused, then the matter would still have also gone to the Planning Inspectorate. In either way, it will be determined by them, and naturally Northamptonshire Council and any other stakeholders will have their opportunity to make representations to the Planning Inspectorate, who will be determining it and would have been determining it pretty much whichever way it would have happened. I'm very conscious on taking this on a broader scale I'm very conscious that the team are doing a great deal of work in transforming the planning service so that we do address matters as quickly as possible. I'm conscious of the other application which you raised, Councillor Lee, which is a less significant application or a less substantial application, which has been long delayed. We in the team are looking into this and indeed have had some engagement with Councillor Watts about this, Councillor Kelly Watts. And we're trying to find out exactly what went wrong. I'm also looking at another non-determination issue in the Raunds area. So, we are making sure that if we've got problems, that they are addressed as quickly as possible. I mean, it's for the good of everybody. And we're also working on a more strategic level at pace to get the planning service beefed up and to be able to be responsive to challenges. And the last thing I would say, Madam Chair, is that with the numbers of applications being dealt with are actually pretty high. The numbers have actually increased somewhat this year, and that's perhaps where some things are maybe falling through the cracks, but it isn't something we're not taking seriously. And I'm happy to engage with yourself, Councillor, and with anybody else on any individual matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. I have Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chairman. And to answer Councillor Lee's point about children missing in education, yeah, absolutely, the figure has risen. Part of that is to do with the timing that these statistics are done, because obviously school holidays, a lot of data isn't available during the school holiday and we can't have the contact with the schools. It's quite rightly, the teachers are having a well-deserved break. So we expect that to dip again next time it's recorded, as now schools have gone back. What I have asked is to be looked into is those that are long-term missing in education as opposed to those that are transitioning through the system, so those that have just moved into the area or those that have just moved out of the area, and for those reasons in there. So I have asked for a report and look into those long-term missing from education rather than those that are in a short-term period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to highlight an issue that I know is very close to Councillor Lee's heart, and that is NHS health checks. I'm delighted to say that for the first time, the health checks offered are on target this quarter. And there's more work to be done to make sure those people who are offered their health checks take them up. But it's good news that they're now being offered and the system is running better. So I very much hope that next quarter we will see that the number of people actually taking up those health checks has also increased and is travelling towards the green, if not back into the green or into the green for the first time. So I thought you'd be keen to be updated on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. I don't see any further hands. So with that, I already have a mover, Councillor Bundy. I'm looking for a seconder for the paper, please. Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So with that, the recommendations are set out on page 34 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. May I please have a vote in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Moving on, agenda item 6, the Bus Service Improvement Plan Plus BSIP Plus funding. I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting. And Councillor Maxwell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Good morning. This report sets out the bus service, how it would run to 24-25, but there are no new routes. Will be established. If anything, it has decreased since COVID and the buses are empty. We still not have a bus service to the villages and in Ringsted twice a day, which is no help. Great Annerton has been promised a minibus, but somehow from whom in NNC? Whilst we have been awarded a bus service improvement grant, This does not give us a new bus routes at all in NNC. You cannot get a bus to Ketching General, Northampton General from Rushden. Equally, there's no bus service to Wellingborough or Northampton railway stations. People are getting older, less mobile. Bus service have not kept up, and as a result, nothing's changed in the last 10 years. We have no choice but to use cars or to get to work, shops, and local area. There is no buses to Thrapston, Wellingborough, Northampton swimming pools. What's changed? Nothing. In 7.31, the council must provide people with travel across Northamptonshire and beyond in order to sustainable a green environment and promote active travel. We can see if funds are not provided for 25, 26 and beyond, these services could be withdrawn and we're not commercially viable. What happens then? No buses. As the council, we must make sure that we have a bus service for people to use. We must plan to help people travel to the doctors, hospitals, work, shops and leisure. We must not reduce the bus budget, but increase the service to meet everyone's needs and not to use taxis to get around. Last week, I experienced this myself returning from Northampton, and sadly, there was no bus because there was no buses back to Rushden after the meeting. Therefore, NNC must ensure that this is monitored, and as we as a council must have an effective bus services for all in NNC. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I'd like to now invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting, and the same rules apply. Councillor Lee, you have a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is actually a good news story. It's 160 million that's been provided by the government as a bus service improvement plan, half of which, well, it'll be 80 million over 2 years. It's welcome news. And like my colleague councillor, I wanted to say I hope that officers are looking at the options to reinstate the bus services to Kettering General Hospital. From Corby, it's impossible to get to Kettering General Hospital as well. You have to change buses in Kettering. This is relevant because the parking at Kettering General Hospital is at crisis point. I've heard of people going round for an hour, not finding a parking space and missing their appointment. By the way, there's no cycle parking at Kettering General Hospital either, but I think most people who arrive at Kettering Hospital prefer to travel by car or bus rather than a bicycle if their health is not optimal. Also, there's the bus number 2 route in Kettering that does not stop, no longer stops at Tesco's. So when you go to the huge roundabout near the big Tesco's in Kettering, you see pedestrians struggling with their shopping across 2 or 3 arms of the roundabout. So the number 2 bus, that's a campaign we're holding in Kettering. We really hope that that bus can be reinstated. So lastly, when you look at which links to provide or reinstate, please bear in mind the levelling up areas in Wellingborough, Kettering and Corby, where car ownership is at a much lower level. So this could be part of the levelling up programme. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'd now like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting, and the same rules apply. Councillor Buckingham, 3 minutes to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. As with my colleagues, I welcome this report. However, there are some concerns that I have. And the major concern is, and it says in 4.1, the majority of bus services in England are provided by commercial operators. And part of the report also goes into, well, we've got to wait to find out what the operators are going to sort of cut, and they will cut each year before we can decide what we put in our plans. And I think that needs to be wrong, because this enhanced partnership and the council needs to drive improvement. Otherwise, the operators can just look around and think, well, they've got some money now. You know, if we take away certain services, they will prop it up. And it should be about improvements. It's not just about propping up commercial services. So this is what we want from funding: find ways to improve the best bus, work, school, leisure networks, so that people do feel that they can get on a bus. Because I know that in the last year, bus services, reliability, getting new bus drivers in, means that the bus service itself is coming from a low point now before this injection of money comes in. So you need to think outside the box on this one. We should be driving it, not the commercial operators. The other thing that I'm just going to, it needs connecting our communities and how we can do that. And a bus pass will only work if you've got buses to get onto. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I would now like to invite Councillor Matt Binley, Executive Member for Highways, Travel and Assets, to introduce the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think an awful lot of those points raised will actually be covered with my presentation on this report. However, I will pick those up. I think, first of all, I have to say, a little bit disappointed. It's very much a lot of comments. The glass is very much half empty. I think we do have to look at this in a positive light. Councillor Maxwell, I was half expecting you to hug me over this, but clearly that's not going to happen. Councillor Maxwell, some of the points that you raised, what I would do is I would direct you, section 4.10 within the report does explain a number of the positives that we have had in Northamptonshire with regards to keeping our bus service alive, where many other areas have not been, let's say, either so fortunate or so well prepared, and do not necessarily work as well with their partners in the bus service as we have done, to continue to maintain routes. There may have been reductions in service, i.e. the frequency of the number of buses, but we haven't lost any routes during COVID, unlike a lot of other local authority areas have had to do. I think, I will cover your point about KGH, and Councillor Lee, you also raised that. I am aware of that. However, of course, with regards to transport to KGH, as you would imagine, the frequency of the requirement of people going there doesn't tend to be regular. Fortunately, most of us don't require to go to hospital on a regular basis, albeit, of course, there are those who need to visit relatives on a regular basis or may even work out of KGH. There are, of course, buses to KGH. They just might not be direct ones. And just like a train, you will have to change, especially when KGH is only a short way out at Kettering. Of course, there is another bus service that will take individuals there. And worst case scenario, of course, they could walk. But the point is there are those bus services available. The key area here, and this covers a number of the points raised, is that this is user-driven. Use it or lose it. That is one of the issues that we have. We need individuals to be using the bus service. We have carried out consultations to find out what would drive users to use the bus service, and working with our partners to try and modernise the bus service as best as possible. But the point here is, this sustainable mode of transport that's good for the environment, or better for the environment, should I say, than car use, it's about individuals using it. And the point is that, as it stipulates in the report, bus use is still only around 90% as what it was pre-COVID. That is what one of the challenges is. So that, you know, the fact that people are still not using the buses, we need people to get onto those buses. Councillor Maxwell, I'm not going to pick up on the comment about not using taxis. I think my colleagues may mention that later. But I think that we have to have various different modes of transport across the whole of North Northamptonshire to cater for as many people's needs, if not all, wherever possible. Just finally, Chair, I mean, I think we do have to remember, as the report states, that the service has still been impacted by COVID. We are, you know, still not at the levels that we were before user-wise. So I'm hoping, Chair, that I have covered all of the points raised. I'll now go on to the report, and if there is anything that I have missed, I do believe that everything else will be covered, and I apologise if anything's duplicated. So this report is to note the receipt of the funding to the value of £560,412 of bus service improvement plan plus for the year 23-24 to NNC, and to agree it can be spent on improving the bus service in North Northamptonshire in accordance with the terms and conditions as are detailed in Appendix A. The funding has been allocated from a pot of £160 million of funding that's come from the Department for Transport for local authorities to improve fares, services and infrastructure. Plus, there's £140 million for the operators themselves to help protect essential services, and this was announced in May this year. At the same time, the government announced the extension of the £2 fare cap until October, or at the end of October 2023, and then a £2.50 until the end of November 2024. The government has been providing support to the bus industry since the start of the pandemic, and the bus service has only returned, as I said earlier, to approximately 90% of usage compared to pre-COVID levels. So if you think about it, that in itself is a drop because, you know, usage should increase. The same level of funding has also been allocated for the year 24-25 to the same value, but this is dependent on the bus service budget being maintained at least its current level. Currently, our bus service budget comprises of a £274,000 bus subsidy and a £2,907,320 of concessionary fares. It should be noted that unspent funding can be rolled over to the next financial year, and I feel that that is actually very important given how far we already are into this financial year, and the fact that the funding's only recently been awarded. The funding is to carry out targeted actions which will deliver the best outcomes for the bus service. Now, they are to continue to fund existing bus services where they represent value for money or maintain essential connectivity for local communities. Also, to increase service frequency or restore services withdrawn since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, where there is a reasonable prospect of the service becoming commercially viable within the BSIP plus funding period. To finally forward fund improvements where Section 106 developer funding is due before the end of the grant funding period to increase the time period for the service to achieve commercial viability. If the report is approved, the next steps would be to work with the operators to see if they do plan any reductions in services, as was mentioned earlier. It's important to note that operators are only required to give us 70 days notice to reduce or withdraw any services. Also, to work with the bus operators on the aforementioned actions to then be able to draw up a list of proposed service interventions to grow long-term patronage, revenues, maintain service levels to maintain social and economic connectivity for our community. Therefore, Chair, on that basis, I would like to move the recommendations made out in section 3.1, that's A to C, for the reasons set out in 3.2 of the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Are there any comments from the floor at all from members? Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Just move that down. I'm supportive of the aims set out in section 2.3 of the report. Bus services are something that regularly come up in these meetings and other meetings, which highlights the importance of these for local people for not only work purposes, health purposes, but also leisure and getting out and about in their community. It's something we've discussed previously at the Sustainable Communities EAP, which again is just highlighting the need for this sort of funding to come forward and make sure we're absolutely maximising it locally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Harrison. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to welcome this report. I think it's very welcome that the government is providing extra funds to enable us to improve and enhance bus services. Councillor Pentland has mentioned many of the benefits of public transport, and it falls into all sorts of areas, but very much health and well-being, helping people not to be isolated if they can get to places, being able to access healthcare, being able to access social care, and all those vital services that they require. So, it's really welcome. I absolutely understand Councillor Maxwell's concerns about, some areas not being as connected as we would like. But it's very clear that there are specific ways in which this improvement fund has to be used. It would be great if in the future we can extend our services, because some rural communities do suffer from being less connected than others. And so, I hope that our ambitions for the future would include that. But that withstanding that, it's really, really welcome that we've got this funding. And I know that we'll use it really usefully and improve those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, I welcome this report as well. I welcome the injection of funding into this. I have to echo Councillor Binley's remarks that, in the end, use it or lose it. There has got to be no commercial operator is going to be putting on a bus service that is riding around not having any passengers on it. I think, the country learnt this lesson back in the 1950s and 60s with the lovely little branch lines and little railway lines that evil Dr. Beeching closed down. Again, it was the same analogy. In those days, people simply weren't using these secondary railway lines, and in the end, that's when the axe was swung. Now here, I think that that's not quite the same picture, because we do have demand for bus services. Let's make sure it's as joined up as possible. Let's make sure that we have got as much connectivity as possible. And, like a number of colleagues, I represent a very large rural ward with a lot of villages in it. We're not able, I think, to have bus services running from dawn till midnight from every village to every outlet. It's not possible to do it. So let's make sure that with the welcome injection of funding that we've got, and working with the operators to provide the most comprehensive and practical service as possible. But, in conclusion, Chair, once again, he's right. Use it or lose it. Let's get passengers actually using these services. That will be good for the operators, and it will ensure the retention of a reasonably good, comprehensive service. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Howes.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just to sort of extend what my colleagues have said, we obviously do want to see an increase in services, specifically in the rural areas as well. But I just wanted to point out that one of the things that has happened in my ward successfully since the County Council made a number of bus service cuts was the community came together and established effectively a community-run bus service that successfully runs twice a week It is also worked in conjunction with the council. There are pots of funding that the council have assisted with, but it's a community-run service and it's very successful. And I would urge, where possible, we can have some of that spread across the area with the community instigating those ideas. This is something I think all members should be talking to parish councils around. As I say, in my ward, there was a good collective of parish councils who came together and have done this now successfully for about 4 years. So it can be done, and it's a lifeline, and it's really important. But where possible, as funding permits, we will continue to push and deliver in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Yes, I think this is a positive paper moving forward. And Councillor Binley, you have moved the paper, I understand. Thank you. So I shall be looking for a seconder for the recommendation, please. Thank you, Councillor Howes. Thank you. The recommendations are set out on page 54 of the agenda pack, and they have been moved and seconded. Please may I see a show of hands in favour?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Kettering Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. I would like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. And the same again, Councillor Lee, 3 minutes. Thank you.
What a wonderful example of a transparent, detailed, well-researched and well-put-together report this is. I like every aspect of it. There is no doubt that we need these walking and cycling tracks in Kettering. I see on page 134 in table 6.4 that the northeast route, the connection to Weekley along Stamford Road, is ranked number 1. Many pupils will be able to use that route. It's brilliant. I have 2 points. Firstly, the link to the Greenway, which will be discussed here later. The consultation found that respondents mentioned the link between Kettering's cycling and walking network and the Greenway. And indeed, the northeast route of it is meant to link up to Route 6 of the Ice Valley Greenway. And I heard that, well, officers are making progress and have pulled together the funding for this, which is fantastic. It's really good news, and I thank the officers who have been working very hard to make this happen, and I cannot wait to see this happen. It's fantastic. So I want to pay tribute to those officers. And then secondly and lastly, there is on page 517 mention of cycle parking, saying you can have wonderful routes, but the availability of safe cycle parking at either end of a trip will heavily influence the decision to travel by bicycle. And that's so true. A cycle parking should be safe and in sufficient supply. And just a reminder that Kettering General Hospital has no parking at all for cyclists. Okay, thank you. But this is a wonderful report, and I cannot wait to see these routes happen because I love to cycle, but I haven't felt safe for a very long time. And a lot of people are in the same position. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. I'd now like to invite Councillor Matt Binley, Executive Member for Highways, Travel and Assets, to introduce the report. Thank you again, Chair. Thank you very much, Councillor Lee, for your welcome comments, of course. And I do think you make a very, very important point there, because there's a couple of bits that you touched upon in the fact that not only does this link into the Greenway strategy, which of course we're going to be talking about later, but you also talked about the bit on page 134 with regards to pupils. So again, that also links into another report that we are talking about today, which of course is the the Sustainable Modes of Travel to School strategy that we have on the agenda. So it really does interconnect into an awful lot of things. So thank you very much again for your comments. So to expand on that, Chair, I'll now present the report. So this report is to provide information on the Kettering Local Cycling and Walking Infrastructure Plan. That's also known as the LCWIP.
It seeks the approval for the adoption of the LC Whip for Kettering, which has been through public consultation, of which 81% of people supported it, 3% against. You may wonder why, where's the missing lot? That's because the rest answered that they did not know. The report contains a significant amount of supporting information in the appendices, there is quite a lot of work, Councillor Lee, as you rightly say. There's an awful lot of information in there. It is a very, very thorough report. These consist of the draft LC Whip, the engagement report, and the public consultation report. Local cycling and walking infrastructure plans are recommended by the Department for Transport for short and long-term provision for cycling and walking within the area. The LC Whip has been developed to identify prioritised cycling and walking infrastructure improvements for future investment. It is to ensure that consideration is given to cycling and walking within both local planning and transport policies and strategies, and to make the case for future funding for walking and cycling infrastructure. It should be noted that the LC Whip for Kettering also includes Burton Latimer. The proposals are to link with the Greenway strategies, as Councillor Lee rightly identified earlier. A significant amount of analysis of the current provisions, as well as looking at the potential for walking and cycling routes, is contained within the LC Whip. As I said, a public consultation has taken place, and following the review of the consultation comments received, the draft LC Whip was developed, taking those into consideration as part of the technical report. 5.2 and 5.3 of the report detail the walking and cycling improvement routes identified. The LC Whip proposals have been considered by the Sustainable Communities Executive Advisory Panel, to which there were no objections raised. The Place and Environment Scrutiny Committee have also considered the LC Whip, and they welcomed the progress made. If approved, the next steps will be to include publishing a final version of the LC Whip on our website. Work will begin on the development of preliminary designs for the routes and improvements identified to help form future funding bids. Therefore, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations made out in sections 3.1a to c for the reasons set out in section 3.2.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. So I'd now like to invite member debate from the floor, and I have Councillor Edwards first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I fully support this, Councillor Binley. I think it's a great piece of work and a great bit of production that's been happening behind the scenes a lot of the time. I had the pleasure in taking part in 2 of the group sessions, and it was great to listen to other people and the residents and to find out what they'd like. You're quite right; it does fit into with my subject that's coming up in a little while, but just to highlight, so because some of this covers the area I represent as well. So if we look at Southfield School for Girls, only 1% currently cycle to that particular school. And I can understand why, because it's on 2 major roads. It's on 2 roads that aren't particularly cycle savvy, so implementing this will help increase that, because if we look at 27% of them actually walk, so that's only 28% of the students at a senior school. The rest of them get a motorised form of transport. And you all know, and I certainly do know, that a lot of my senior schools, that's my number 1 complaint, is being dropped off by a motorised car or by parents, rather than the buses, because I know the buses do attend as well and drop them off, but that is anything we can do to get students out of motorised cars. This will go a long way to helping that. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a brilliant piece of work, and I'm very excited about it. I think it's something that we want to see across all of our major towns in North Northamptonshire. I thought Councillor Lee's point about how scary it is getting on your bike and cycling around some of our urban areas is a really good point. I used to be a keen cyclist, but I simply can't cycle around the area I live because I'm just too scared. It doesn't feel safe. So these kinds of programs of planning and, you know, making it safe, creating cycle routes, creating walking infrastructure is just so important. And it's, you know, you've made the point about the connections to two other papers that we have that we're going to discuss today. So I won't labour the point because, you know, we're going to be covering it so very well. But again, in terms of people's health and well-being, being able to walk safely, being able to cycle safely, being able to be out in the open, being able to get exercise, to be able to use sustainable forms of transport, getting into the habit of that when you're still at school because you're able to do so. All of these strategies are really coming together to deliver something tangible for people that will have a really huge impact on people's health and well-being. So I won't repeat the points when the other papers come up, but this is really, really important, and I can't wait to see us develop our LC whips for our other parts of Northamptonshire. So thank you to all of those who've worked so hard on it.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Like my colleagues, I'm really pleased to see this coming forward. I've seen it at various stages over the last couple of years, particularly when we've discussed it at the Sustainable Communities EAP, and having talks from those organisations, particularly in the Kettering area, who've been working really hard on this has been really valuable. It's really good to see in the report the level of public support for what's coming forward, and it's good that it has been developed in close conjunction with the communities that are going to be using these cycling and walking infrastructure plans. Like Councillor Harrison, looking forward to seeing the other ones come forward. I know that they're at varying stages and that engagement is going on within the communities. But just finally, and colleagues have kind of alluded to this, one of the things that we're really keen on is having that green thread running throughout this organisation. And there are a number of papers coming forward today, including this one, that really do show that green thread is there and touching all sorts of work that the Council is doing, which is really good to see. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Yes, and I'm, as you can imagine, a full supporter, and with my paper coming along earlier, I'm sure I shall touch on this as well. So, thank you. Councillor Binley, was there anything else you wanted to add? I know you've moved already, but are you happy with that?
Just to thank colleagues for their comments, and yes, they're absolutely right in the fact that we are looking at this in the round. This is not a strategy that is siloed. It very much involves a number of other areas, as we've heard people rightly talking around the room today. So I just would like to say thank you again for those welcome comments.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a mover, Councillor Binley. I'm looking for a seconder, Councillor Edwards. Thank you. The recommendations are set out on page 71 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Right, moving on, agenda item 8, Hackney Carriage dezoning, Hackney Carriage bylaws and Hackney Carriage number limits. So I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting. And same again, Councillor Maxwell, you have a maximum of 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good morning again. I support the Council into replacing the Hackney Carriage zones and replace it with one NNZ zone. I could not believe that the Public Health Act 1875 still applies today. If a black cab took you to Northampton, it had to come back empty. What is all that about? Equally, having 4 different licenses seems mad to cover these from different zones. If we support the NNC zone, they should charge the same prices as other taxis, have the same policies which ensure consistency in information. When would this happen? How soon can we make sure that every taxi in NNC operates together. The dezoning should happen immediately and no hanging around for 12 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Councillor Colquhoun was due to speak, but unfortunately he was not able to attend today. But I would now like to invite Mr. Neil Riley to address the meeting. And Mr. Riley, you also have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I'm here again in front of you to object to the removal of the zones. Again, as an industry, we've had to sit and listen to the half-truths that keep on getting told by this authority. We've tried to bring this subject up on many times over the last year. Firstly, it was a fare increase, but you wouldn't discuss it as you're only talking about the fares. Secondly, it was a policy. Again, we're not talking about it as we're only discussing the policy. And now we're here, it's, well, we have one fare, one policy, we might as well have one zone. Then it's made out that you're helping us and the environment with better fuel efficiency, as we can drop off in Wellingborough and then get a fare back to Corby. Firstly, let me tell you that the fares between zones are few and very far between. And when we do get one, no one is going to stay in that area. The reason? We don't know the area and therefore don't want to jeopardise our licence by taking someone the wrong way. We can be given 6 points on our licence if the driver of a Hackney carriage fails to take the shortest route to any destination unless given other directions by the hirer. I've heard councillors say that we can use sat-navs, where Hackneys were supposed to have knowledge of the area, and sat-navs only give you a route, not the shortest route. When this is implemented, and let's face it, you're going to do it regardless of what's said, you're going to have to sit a knowledge test that incorporates the whole of North Northamptonshire, all 382 square miles. No one is going to be able to pass this knowledge test unless it's severely dumbed down, thus further damaging our industry. You say you want to make all drivers the same standard by making existing drivers take new tests. Why don't you make sure that the new drivers meet the standards of existing drivers and have a proper knowledge test incorporating shortest routes and street names like we've had to, as stated in your new policy? We then move on to current operating Hackneys in North Northamptonshire and how those in Wellingborough and East Northants are saloon cars and have a further 4 years to change to a full Hackney spec vehicle. These will now be able to apply for hire in Corby and Kettering, where traditional vehicles work. God forbid that a young woman mistakenly gets into a saloon car that isn't a Hackney and is attacked. No thought, or should I say care, has been given to this whole process. It's just been harmonise, harmonise, harmonise. Your harmonised fare resulted in inconsistent fares across the area, with drivers confronting fellow drivers who used to be friends regarding working to the council rate and not a lower rate. Passengers confronting drivers, with drivers being subjected to physical attacks and vandalism on their vehicles who have done nothing wrong but charge your fare. Your harmonised policy has resulted in owners being forced out of the industry due to the 4-year age limit, with massive shortage of available vehicles across the country. I've already sent a 1,900-word email to the licensing committee, senior officers outlining the issues in great detail, but it falls on deaf ears as there'll be a review in 2 years. We wait with bated breath whether this will be the final nail in our coffin of our industry in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Riley. I would now like to invite Councillor David Brackenbury, Executive Member for Growth and Regeneration, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning again, everybody. Firstly, I'd like to thank the two public speakers. I'm going to disappoint you, Councillor Maxwell. We are, in fact, going to go out for a consultation on this. I think it's probably the most important thing to emphasise at the outset of this that we have not predetermined any conclusion from this paper. We are looking at the matter of dezoning, and we will be doing a full public consultation. Meanwhile, Mr. Riley, no, thank you again for your interest and for your passion. And you know, we do get what you're saying. We understand the issues that you raise, and we are going to take them fully into consideration. And I know that you will be not shy in engaging with this consultation. I'm going to turn to the paper, which is reasonably, the paper itself is relatively straightforward. What it asks to do is it points out that at the moment, when we became North Northamptonshire Council, there are still 4 areas for Hackney carriages, all with different policies and different licensing conditions, and they, of course, operate in their own ways to within their own requirements. It is suggested that we commence a consultation process for the potential removal of these 4 Hackney carriage zones and replace them with one Northamptonshire zone. And the reason for that is that it would obviously have efficiencies of scale. It would also provide the same Hackney carriage service for all residents of Northamptonshire. So it has the ability also for Hackney carriages, and of course it's probably important, Chair, to point out that we are talking about Hackney carriages only in this paper. We are not talking about private hire vehicles which operate to a different set of standards. Hackney carriages are the vehicles which ply for hire and can be found on cab ranks throughout Northamptonshire. It is also true to point out that Department for Transport guidance is that one zone in an authority is considered to be the best practice. Having vehicles plying for hire throughout the area does have the ability for that vehicle to ply for hire throughout Northamptonshire, and I understand Mr. Riley's point about the detail of local knowledge, and obviously that is something which the team will be taking up. So we're recommending this matter go out for a 12-week public consultation. Where I disagree with Mr. Riley is that he implies more or less we've made our minds up. Well, actually we haven't. We would like this matter to be considered, of course, by the Hackney carriage trade throughout Northamptonshire. Of course we do. But we would also like this matter to be considered by users of the Hackney carriage trade in Corby and elsewhere in Northamptonshire, in Kettering, in Wellingborough, and in East Northants. We note, of course, that there is an imbalance in that there are many more Hackney carriage vehicles in Corby than elsewhere in Northamptonshire. And of course, that will very much be taken into consideration as the consultation progresses. We know that Corby is very much, it's always been very much a black cab town. We understand that. So what we want to do is get as wide a feedback as possible from residents, from operators and drivers certainly, and from other stakeholders throughout Northamptonshire, so that consultation, the responses are gives us as wide a snapshot of Northamptonshire opinion as possible. So this is a genuine consultation. We actually want your views. And if there are members of the media who are listening to this discussion, please do publicise this consultation and editorially invite responses, because we are very much interested to have as wide a response as possible. In conclusion, the recommendation is that the executive at 3.1 approve commencement of a consultation process on the potential removal of the current 4 Hackney carriage zones and the replacement with one NNC zone, and also approve the current Hackney carriage bylaws are reviewed. If there were one zone, then the bylaws, which are slightly different in all 4 zones, would have to be brought into alignment, and that would include matters such as the vehicle aging and testing, driver knowledge requirements, which, Mr. Riley, would be proportionate. It would be noted that a Hackney carriage driver who's based in Corby would not necessarily have to have a detailed knowledge of every byway in Rushden, and vice versa. But, as I say, this is a work in progress. This is something that we want to engage with the trade and engage with everybody who uses this important service. And so we are very much open to hearing what is said by colleagues. In conclusion, Chair, I'd like to thank the team. I'd like to thank all the officers. I'd like to thank members of the Licensing and Appeals panel who've worked so hard on this paper. I want to, as I say, and I'm looking forward to seeing a really good and robust response to the consultation. And in conclusion, I move the recommendation at 3.1, again, as my colleague says, for the reasons set out in 3.2. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. I'd now like to invite Councillor Jonathan Eakins to provide comments as Chair of the Licensing and Appeals Committee. In line with the Council's constitution, Councillor Eakins is speaking with the consent of the Chair but does not hold voting rights on this matter. Thank you, Councillor Eakins.
Thank you, Chair. Executive members, councillors, officers and members of the public today. I'll start off with apologising if some of the things I'm about to present to you you've already heard, but if you'd just like to bear with me. So, in summary, when North Northamptonshire was formed, legislative provisions meant that the previous former authority, areas of Corby, East Northants, Kettering and Wellingborough, became separate zones for Hackney carriage licensing purposes. The Executive are being asked today to consider this matter and to determine whether a consultation exercise should be undertaken on potentially removing these 4 zones and forming one new North Northamptonshire zone. Further information on dezoning is, as there are 4 Hackney carriage zones, North Northamptonshire Council has 4 separate arrangements and 4 systems in place for each zone. This includes licensing, vehicle plates, bylaws, fare tariffs and fees and charges. This means that each zone continues to have a licence, its own Hackney carriages and drivers, and operate to the bylaws in existence for that former areas. It also means that drivers wishing to apply for hire in more than one area across North Northamptonshire would need to obtain separate licences for each area that they would wish to work in. There is also a need for separately set fees and fares to be in place for each of those zones. The authority can make one of 2 decisions. It can either retain the existing 4 Hackney carriage zones or remove them and create one zone for the whole of North Northamptonshire area. It is not legally possible to amalgamate 2 or more zones. The current DFT taxi and private hire licensing best practice guidance document, issued in 2010, recommends the abolition of zones, mainly for the benefit of the travelling public, since they state that zoning tends to diminish the supply of taxis and the scope for customer choice. Dezoning would provide one licensing process for Hackney carriage vehicles and drivers across North Northamptonshire and would allow Hackney carriages to work the ranks and apply for their trade and hire across the whole area of North Northamptonshire, allowing them to reduce their travelling costs, should they so wish, by operating in a town at the end of a journey rather than returning to base empty. This will allow them to be more competitive, efficient and environmentally sustainable due to the potential for fewer empty journeys. A single zone would only require a single tariff for fares and a single set of bylaws, simplifying the administrative process for this council. If the decision is taken to consult on the removal of these zones, this will be used to better understand the impact upon the trade and the travelling public. Should a decision be taken to remove the 4 zones, it will also be necessary to consider the implementation of new Hackney carriage bylaws for the authority. Each former authority zone area currently has a set of bylaws in its own right, which will no longer have effect should the zones be removed. And the limits are the Transportation Act of 1985, amended the Town Police Clauses Act of 1847, some 150 years ago or more, to allow licensing authorities to limit the number of Hackney carriages if they so wished. There is no significant unmet demand. Corby has a limit on the numbers of Hackney carriage licences permitted, and there is no limit in the other 3 areas. The DFT best practice guidance states that where restrictions are imposed, that these should be regularly reconsidered to determine whether the limit should continue. It is suggested that the interests of the travelling public should be considered to identify the benefits or disadvantages of retaining or removing these limits. The DFT document also suggests that any review should consider if there is evidence that removal of the controls would result in a deterioration in the amount of quality of taxi service provision. Should the authority decide to remove the zones in North Northamptonshire, then it will, by this action, also remove the limit on Hackney carriages in the Corby area. It would then be for the authority to decide if any further consideration should be given to Hackney carriage licence limits for the whole area, or if the Hackney carriage and private hire trade should be determined by market forces. The Licensing Appeals Committee considered this matter on the 3rd of July 23 and resolved to recommend to the Executive that a consultation process be undertaken on the provincial removal of the current 4 Hackney carriage zones and the replacement with 1 North Northamptonshire Council zone. They also recommend that the current Hackney carriage bylaws be reviewed. A joint meeting of sustainable communities, prosperous communities and the executive advisory panels also considered the matter on the 9th of August 23. The panels were generally supportive of the consultation process and requested that particular consideration be given to the consultation with trade groups. So the Executive today are being asked to consider whether it would be appropriate to approve the commencement of a consultation process onto the potential removal of the current 4 Hackney carriage zones. The Executive are also being asked to consider whether the current Hackney carriage bylaws should be reviewed. The next steps are, if the Executive decision is to progress consideration of the removal of the zones at this time, then a consultation process will be undertaken but with the trade, partners and travelling public. This consultation would be undertaken using the Council's consultation and engagement hub. We generally want to hear from all interested parties, including the drivers, the potential impacts that they can have, the taxi owners, so that we can fully understand to consider the potential impacts before a future decision is made. We would therefore ensure that publicity is undertaken to alert members of the public when it goes live and to encourage them to respond in full. In addition, direct communications would be sent to all Hackney carriage proprietors and drivers to inform them of the consultation and invite them to participate. Trade groups will always have the opportunity to request a meeting with myself and officers of the licensing authority before responding. Once the consultation process has been completed, the responses will be referred back to the Licensing Appeals Committee to determine the next steps. And that's before any final consideration is handed down to the Executive for a decision. Thank you, Chair, for your patience. I can remain here if anybody has any other questions. If not, I'll go and sit down.
So thank you, Councillor Eakins. Yeah. Right. Councillor Brackenbury, are you happy for us to take it for the debate now? You don't want to come back at all?
No, I'd just like to reiterate what I said a moment ago, to give my thanks to the Licensing and Appeals Committee and the Sustainable Communities EAP for their careful consideration of this matter, and to reiterate that we are very interested in the views both of the trade but also of the travelling public and any other partners who are affected by this proposed change. We want to see transport options in North Northamptonshire, as indeed we've been discussing in other papers today, that provide as much choice for the residents of North Northamptonshire and for the whole area. So, of course, the Hackney carriage trade plays a vital part in having a sustainable transport network across the whole area. So, that's looking forward to the debate, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. So I'm now like to invite member debate from the floor. Does anybody wish to speak on the paper? Councillor Binley, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I'd just like to pick up section 7.6 of the report with regards to the EAP consultation. I did actually chair this item on the EAP, and I will add the EAP is a cross-party and also is across Northamptonshire. So I would add that the comments made there at the EAP were very supportive of this going forward for consultation to be reviewed, and that was across the political spectrum, Chair, during that meeting. And of course, one of the bits that's in there, unfortunately, I see that Mr. Riley's left, but one of the bits that I did raise, which is actually documented in there, is the fact that I did specifically say that, that as part of the consultation, the trade groups be given particular consideration. So that is in there. We are taking this into consideration. We are wanting to consider everybody's views and opinions as part of the consultation. But of course, we are very conscious that the one area that dezoning will have an impact on would of course be Corby, because that operates slightly different to the other areas at the moment. But Councillor Eakins was quite right. I'd made a note, and I don't want to repeat it. But of course, as part of that EAP, discussion, of course, the point was made about what the DFT have said with regards to zoning, in the fact that zones should only exist where they can clearly be justified. But of course, that does not mean that it can't be justified. But that's what will happen as part of the consultation, to look at all of this. As I say, Chair, the point here is, unfortunately, regardless to other comments that have been made, this has not been determined that this is what's going to happen. As Councillor Brackenbury rightly says, this is about going to consultation and about listening to all of the views and opinions of everybody. However, I think it's right and proper that we look at this, especially when we're considering the things that we've just all talked about to do with things like greenway strategies, etc. We need to be looking at this in the round with regards to our other strategies that we have going on, and as to whether this really is an environmentally friendly policy with regards to having zones at the moment. We should be looking at that. So I welcome this, Chair, and I do support the report. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Are there any further comments from the floor? No. Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Brackenbury, you have moved the paper. I would now call for a seconder, please. Councillor Binley, thank you. So the recommendations are set out on pages 298 of the agenda pack and have been moved and seconded. Please may I have a show of hands in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Through a number of requests, I'm just going to call a short break, comfort break. So about 10 minutes, I think we'll Thank you. Welcome back, members. Thank you very much for accommodating that short break. I will move straight on now to agenda item 9, which is the North Northamptonshire Greenway Strategy. And I would like to invite Councillor Ross Armour, yes, thank you, to address the meeting. Councillor Armour, you have 3 minutes or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the Greenway, I want to start by saying that I thought the document was very well presented, and I did enjoy reading it. There are a number of trails, the development of which relies on the goodwill of landowners, and I was just wondering how many of those have been identified that is the case, and do we have previous relationships in place with these landowners? Just worry that this potentially could hold us back. Further to that, the Greenway is something that will obviously need maintained over the long term, and this will require funding. So I'm just wondering, because obviously there will need to be a strategy around capital investment and external funding to do this. And then just finally, as far as I can see, particularly on the Wellingborough to Rushden route, there are still questions around flood risk assessment and access into Chester Country Park, which I hope to be addressed. So I was just wondering whether that could be addressed as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Next, I would like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting, and Councillor Maxwell, 3 minutes again. Thank you.
Again, good morning. I think the report regards the Greenway strategy is marvellous. Sarah Peacock, who was a councillor in Rushden, was a forerunner, sadly no longer here, in setting up the Rushden link. When the Greenway started in Rushden, most people thought it was mad. Moving on, it now helps people use it for leisure, school, work, and also improves road safety. I believe the 4 routes, Rothwell to Kettering, Wellingborough to Wollaston via Irchester, Burton Latimer to Irthlingborough, Kettering to Thrapston is great, and clearly will help children as well as adults be more independent. One thing that must happen is better signs, bins, poo bins, and no rubbish bins. We must have more rubbish bins which are signed. We need to move bike shops, second-hand bikes be available. This will encourage people to visit other places and encourage the economy to move forward. Lighting is important. We must ensure this happens. Mistakes were made with Rushden route, like 2 sets of traffic lights in the High Street of Higham Ferrers. But most children feel that going safely to school and parents are also pleased. This clearly will put NNC on the map and an environmental future for the area of NNC. No more 30 bikes travelling along islip or to cause traffic accidents. Well done to all the officers involved in this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I would now like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting, and Councillor Buckingham, you 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, like my colleagues, I welcome this report. It is a good, well-written report, and it does, for the majority, consider the strategic master plan for the Greenway. However, and it's really important for our tourism objectives, alongside the Neen and the Eyes and, some of the rural areas that we have and linking up some of our really, really good tourism hotspots. I don't know whether you remember some years ago, East Northants had what was known as the Saunter Bus, which linked up strategic sites, which was a circular route where you could get on and get off and visit some of those sites for people that didn't have cars or didn't want to drive around. And I see something like that going along the rivers and dropping off people like Chester Farm and Rushton Lakes, along the Nene, Wellingbury, Bankman, whatever. Two things that I want to discuss are, and I know I sound like a broken record, but the maintenance of our brooks which feed into the Nene, the Eyes. Last week alone, all 3 brooks around Corby were contaminated. And nothing's being done, and it's falling on deaf ears. The rubbish in our brooks, the contamination, and I'll leave that one there. In terms of some of the things that you've put forward in funding parts of it, and you're more reliant on Section 106 money, which is developer contributions, but we also need to be looking at our biodiversity net gains through our planning system, our nature recovery plans, so that, you know, some of that environmental stuff is also brought in and not just reliant on Section 106, because that money's going to run out. You know, developers say, oh, well, I've got, you know, social housing, I've got roads, I've got infrastructure, and now you want me to fund this as well? And, you know, there was only a small pot of money. I'm going to leave it there, but those are my concerns, but I really welcome this report. It, you know, we do have beautiful spots in our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. So it's down to me now to introduce the report. So I'd just first like to pick up on some of the comments that our speakers have raised, and I'll just start with Councillor Armour. Thank you very much for supporting this report. The relationships with landowners are always very sort of contentious. You know, it's up to us to ensure that we build those relationships, and part of the report, which I will refer to, is about building on those relationships, and we have 4 councillor area leads that are working with, in the locality, working with the landowners and everything. There's always a way round things, you know. It's difficult to work with landowners. Landowners are very precious about their land, and rightly so. But, you know, we have to offer incentives about trying to help maintain the land or things like that. So, yes, there are ways and means of working around them. Maintenance as well, you're absolutely right. There's no point in developing something without providing maintenance. And this strategy also looks at how we can develop a means to maintaining these greenways that we're looking to produce. Excuse me, Councillor Maxwell, you mentioned our lovely former councillor, Sarah Peacock, and I'd just like to pay tribute to her also. She was an absolute champion for the Greenway. She did an awful lot of work, and it was really sad when she left us. And it's great to see that the legacy that she has sort of put in place is continuing. Real thank you for the support on this. Signage and bins and such as well, yes, it's something obviously that we need to maintain. We work with a lot of different partners. I know last year Nenscape, who we worked with, they were very keen. They got some funding, and there was additional signage put along the Greenway, along the Nen Valley as well. We'd also like to encourage people to take their waste home, because actually we shouldn't be really leaving waste in the countryside. So I think that's probably something that we probably want to be looking at campaigning about anyway as well. It's also extremely difficult for our waste collectors to go down these sort of tracks to take waste away. So you know, we have thought about it. It's probably a campaign that we'd need to do or something like that. You mentioned bikes as well. Absolutely, we want to encourage bikes, but it also gives an opportunity for businesses out there to come along and bring those sort of facilities. So you know, who knows, we could have some sort of growth in local cycle companies coming in and around throughout the Greenway. So I think that's really positive as well, that we can encourage local businesses. Councillor Buckingham, you talked about tourism objectives, and you're absolutely right. And this will sort of feed into the tourism strategy that we are developing as well, which will be coming forward very soon, hopefully. We're in the final stages of that too. So, actually all of these things seem to fit sort of hand in glove with each other when we talk about the LC WIPs, the Greenway strategy, the tourism strategy. That they all work together, and I'm delighted to say that all of our teams have a very close relationship and are all working together to ensure that, you know, we are making sure that we're not missing anything out. Fingers crossed, she says. You also mentioned the maintenance of the brooks, and I think that's something Councillor Pentland is working with and with the Environment Agency, and I know we are with the Destination Nen Valley Board working with the Environment Agency to try and sort of encourage them to take responsibility of their property, the same as we must take responsibility of ours. So thank you for raising that. And you are right as well, funding, Section 106 funding, it's not a sort of a bottomless pit, but Section 106 funding is something that we will be targeting, and as with the LC WIPs paper, but also there are other pots of funding out there that we will be looking at. So, you know, we will go for everything basically and see what we can get to try and develop this fantastic greenway that we're trying to produce throughout the whole of Northamptonshire. So with that, answering those questions, I'll now move to presenting my report. So, excuse me one moment. Quite dry in here, isn't it? So this report introduces the Northamptonshire Greenway Strategic Master Plan along with a feasibility study for the proposed Rushton to Wellingborough phase of the Greenway. Phil Jones Associates Limited was successfully appointed to work, and they work commenced on the strategy at the beginning of March 2023. They undertook a national and local policy review to inform the context of the strategy, which demonstrates significant policy support for a strategic active travel network. They also collected a range of data appertaining to such issues as demographic and census data, collisions, terrain, cycle catchments, severance of existing networks, app data on individual runs, walks, rides, all of which was used to analyse demand and inform work alignments. Both of the documents have been co-produced with the Council's strategic partners, and a series of workshops were held during the process of developing the strategy to engage with key stakeholders. The strategy sets out the vision for the Northamptonshire Greenway, and that is to be a strategic rural network of safe, largely traffic-free routes suitable for walking, wheeling and cycling, connecting settlements, employment, leisure and tourism destinations across Northamptonshire and beyond. The key objectives for this are set out in section 5.5 of the report. The strategy will be widely consulted on and refined as needed following feedback from stakeholders and residents. Following consultation, the plan will then be adopted to ensure it has weight in planning terms and can feed into other policies and strategies, including the emerging strategic plan for Northamptonshire and for future negotiations, as I've said, with developers regarding their planning objectives and obligations. The report also introduces the feasibility study for the Rushton to Wellingborough phase of the Greenway, which assesses the feasibility of creating a new commuter and leisure route, which will make use of the many existing quiet lanes, public rights of way and access tracks within the Nen Valley and existing disused railway greenways within Wellingborough and Rushton. And this study was funded through the Communities Renewal Fund. This continues the legacy of East Northamptonshire Greenway programme, which aimed to create connectivity, walking and cycling opportunities. Following vesting day, the new North Northamptonshire Greenway Board was established early in 2022 as a partnership to include key stakeholders such as the Nen Rivers Trust, the River Nen Regional Park, Natural England, Wildlife Trust, Environment Agency, Sustrans and Highways England. 4 of our council members, as I've previously said, 1 from each locality, have also been appointed to the board to help shape the Greenway throughout the whole of North Northamptonshire. The strategy aims to provide a clear vision and definition for the Greenway, what it is, how it can be used, who might use it, and how it underpins other council strategies and priorities relating to health and well-being, leisure, tourism and active travel. An evidence-led master plan to shape investment and development over the next 10 to 20 years. A formula to calculate developer contributions. Further guidance on rights of way and their role in developing greenways and ensuring the greenways are designed to current national standards. A clear link to the LC WIP process to bring these to rural areas. And a master plan which will link to policies such as the local transport plan to help shape and influence decision making. It will also provide clarity on the maintenance, liability and ownership requirements when the new sections of the Greenway are proposed and opened. The new strategy will be the overarching document setting out the long-term strategy and the aims and objectives of the Greenway. In addition, it will have a series of individual dynamic plans or design recommendation booklets detailing the network in manageable routes. The design recommendation booklets will provide clear summaries of each route, length, surface, land ownership, costs, key stakeholders and route constraints. So the next steps are to consult publicly on both the draft strategy and the Rushton to Wellingborough design recommendations. We will then use the feedback from the consultation to finalise the strategy and bring it back to the executive for approval and recommendation for adoption at full council. There will be ongoing engagement with stakeholders to produce further design recommendation booklets as well. There has been a considerable amount of work to get to this point in the process, and I would just like to thank the team, including Kerry Pennell, Assistant Director, Jack Pishorn and Lucy Horse. Lucy has been involved with the Greenway project pretty much from the start. And I'd also like to thank all the internal and external stakeholders who have engaged with the process, and of course our 4 area leads, and that's Councillor Shacklock, Watt, Tebbert and Hallam. So with that, I'd like to propose the recommendations as set out in section 3 of the report. Thank you. So I'd now like to ask members if they would like to contribute and say something from the floor. Right, I can now see you all. Councillor Pentland, thank you. Ladies first, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. This is a vital strategy that we've got coming forward and one I'm really pleased to see going through the various processes. I'm fortunate coming from High and Ferrers that I get to use the Greenway multiple times throughout the week and think it is a fantastic asset to our area. Enabling you to get to work, for leisure purposes, all sorts. It really is fantastic, and so many people use it every single day. So it would be fantastic to see that spread across our whole area so that people can enjoy it in the same ways that we do in our area. pleased to see that local people will be able to feed into this. They're best placed to advise us on what they think of the plans, which is really important for getting it right for usability as well. And the Greenway project is something that's been discussed at length at the Sustainable Communities EAP, and there's a lot of support for that, and I think that resonates with the fact that we've had a number of speakers today talking about the importance of it, so very supportive of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pentland. Councillor Brackenbury.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, what to say except what an excellent report and master plan this is. And I think I can put your mind at ease that this will certainly feed very much into the development of the North Northamptonshire strategic plan because it underpins so much of what we're trying to achieve, to have sort of a rich, diverse area with opportunities for active lives and active travel, and what better than this? The master plan contains a wealth of information and technical data, and it does repay careful reading. But you know, it's quite an interesting, it's quite a lengthy document. The work that's been done on the Rushden, the Wellingborough to Rushden connectivity is first class. And, you know, I really just would like to congratulate Kerry's team, Lucy, yourself, Chair, for all the detailed, patient work that's gone into the formulation of this. There will always be differences of exactly how to do it and where, you know, how things are brought forward. And, of course, funding will always be an issue, although, and certainly we welcome developer contributions and any other funding pots that we can that can be accessed as well. We've discussed landowners, and engagement with landowners is absolutely crucial to the success of this project, because of course the more actual joined up connected pathways that we can develop, the whole project will become more successful. So, you know, it's really good to see the careful engagement that I know is going on. So in conclusion, I mean, I welcome this excellent report. I welcome the concept behind it. I think today we've talked a lot, haven't we, about various transport options and alternatives. We've talked about buses, we've talked about hackney carriages, we've talked about cycling, which of course has a direct connection to this Greenway. So to have this as well actually does, you know, put the crown on an interesting day's discussions. The Greenway is something which is of considerable strategic importance, not just to North Northamptonshire, but to the whole region. And so I just once again thank you, Chair, and thank all the team that's worked so hard on bringing this excellent paper forward.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this paper is one of many that we are developing and bringing forward as a council that show that not only are we leading the way by bringing together the Big 50 and bringing together our partners to you know, agree a vision for what we want North Northamptonshire to be like, and for us all to pull together to deliver that. This shows that we are already delivering and are a really strong and key partner in that. These types of really strategic, long-term vision documents with genuine desire and systems behind them to make sure they're planned in and become part of what North Northamptonshire is like in the future, you know, really are vital and just show how much we're leading the way. And it's going to be important that we challenge our partners to come together and, you know, to play their part in all of this as well. So, you know, I just think this is really key strategically in some of the wider work that we're trying to achieve across North Northamptonshire, not just as a council, but as an entire system.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Councillor Binley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to echo colleagues' comments, again, as we say, this is just interconnects into so many different things. And I really do think that this shows the holistic approach that this council is taking to these kinds of issues. I would like to just quickly echo your comments, Chair, around bins. Yes, you're absolutely right in everything that you've said there. And I think we also have to remember as well the other things that we're working on. Things such as, for example, of course, the dog fouling PSPO, that's Public Spaces Protection Order for those that don't know, in Corby that's currently undergoing consultation. So things like that also, you know, again, link into that kind of aspect with regards to bins and making sure that people are being responsible with things like dog waste. On the aspect, I know that things like second-hand bikes were mentioned. Bikes, I believe, are either one of, or if not, the most stolen item in the UK. And there are plenty of places to get hold of second-hand bikes. I know that, for example, HMP Five Wells are leading the way with a scheme over in Wellingborough, which would cover the whole of Northamptonshire with regards to bikes and promoting that kind of aspect of active travel to those who don't necessarily have the funds to afford a bike. Lighting as well, I would pick up on that as well, Chair. I think that's an area that we have to approach also with caution, because lighting in itself brings light pollution. And bearing in mind we're talking about the Greenway, it's not very conducive to put a lot of lighting in if it's then going to have a detrimental impact on the environment around it. It wouldn't be very green otherwise, would it? So I think we do have to approach that with extreme caution. You know, Chair, I'm very, very supportive of this paper, and I will be voting in favour of it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. Right, just, yeah, it's absolutely right. Lighting is right. It's our duty, really, to protect the natural environment and disturb it as least as possible, I would suggest, and, you know, encouraging people to take their litter home. And it's something that we all should do. We should take a bit of responsibility and make sure that we're all protecting our open spaces, not just this council. You know, as I say, every resident, we want to retain this beautiful area that we have, and it's everybody's responsibility to do that. As this is a public consultation, it'd be great that we get everybody to engage, and the plan to have further booklets come forward, we can only do that when we have ideas come from people about new areas and additional routes and things like that. So the more we get people to engage, it's like with all of our consultations, isn't it? The more we get people to engage, the more information we have, the better outcome it is. So please encourage everybody to engage with this process and help support the development of this strategy and plan moving forward, so that it can be the best that it can be, so to speak. Thank everybody for all their comments about the team. I know they'll be delighted to hear the praise and thanks that you've given, because some of these papers do take an awful lot of time to put together, and I know the team have been working really, really hard. So I'm sure Kerry and I will be passing on those thanks to them, and I'm sure they'll be delighted. So with that, I am absolutely delighted to move this paper, and I would now like to call for a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Pentland, thank you, as you were the first speaker. Right, so the recommendations are set out on pages 312, beg your pardon, and 313 of the agenda pack. They have been moved and seconded. May I please see a show of hands in favour? Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, next item, it's me again. Agenda item 10, Kettering Artificial Pitch, Lease and Investment. So I would like to invite Councillor Ross Armour again, please. Thank you. And Councillor Armour, you have 3 minutes again. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This will inevitably be a good news story for us as well. The key will be how the Council develops the relationship with the Northamptonshire FA, and of course how quickly the resurfacing comes about. Just 2 points I wanted to make. One, a little bit on the side. I was slightly concerned that the transfer of the asset to the NFA had made it onto the agenda as an alternative option. I don't think that would be right for us. I don't think that's a road we should go down. The report also states that that would bring about further delay in any case. But the main point I wanted to make was, once the pitch is resurfaced, obviously it will be something that we can all celebrate, but I think it's vital that we don't get into a scenario where its use is dominated by one central group. So I think we should monitor that in general, just to provide fairness to the whole community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armour. Right, so I will just address that actually. Yes, the transfer, as you say, is obviously we have to sort of come up with different scenarios, and that isn't an option that we're recommending today because it wouldn't be right for the community. You're absolutely right. And you're also right again about making sure that the pitch still has access for all of the community, and that's something that we're very keen on and something that the team are developing with the Football Association to ensure that it still remains a community asset. So thank you for your comments. So I'll now just like to introduce the report. So this report informs the Council about the lease and investment opportunities for the artificial football pitch, pavilion and athletics track at Thurston Drive in Kettering. The report seeks approval from the Executive for the proposal to enter into a concession contract together with an ancillary long-term lease arrangement and to submit or support the submission by the concessionaire of a funding application to the Football Foundation to redevelop the artificial pitch and pavilion. This arrangement will also support the Kettering Athletics Club and help secure future investment into the athletics track and facilities to ensure the club meets current and future England athletics standards. The artificial football pitch has been condemned for a number of years, and the pavilion and athletics track requires investment to maintain and improve the facilities. The estimated costs are now likely to be closer to £800,000 or £850,000, and this is due to an escalation of price of construction due to increases associated with supply chain and materials. The Council's been approached by the Northamptonshire Football Association, or the NFA, who have offered to support the Council with its intentions to continue to provide these facilities for the community and to redevelop the football and athletics provision on the site. The NFA are keen to have a permanent base on the site by way of a concession arrangement together with a lease of the whole site to support grassroots delivery of football and to work closely with the leisure services, Harriers Athletics Club and England Athletics to support the development of athletics provision and facilities. The proposal from the NFA is to take on the management of the facility in its entirety, artificial pitch, clubhouse, athletics track and the car park, subject to a sufficiently long lease being put in place, and 30 years is proposed for this. It's also proposed to enter into a concession contract together with ancillary lease of the site to the NFA for a peppercorn rent whereby the NFA are responsible for the repairs, maintenance, energy and business rates, with a requirement to establish a sinking fund, of up to £30,000 per annum for a minimum of 10 years to be utilised towards costs in future years to resurface the artificial pitch. The concession and lease will also incorporate a net profit or less share arrangement with the Council if the income generated by the facilities exceeds the operational and sinking fund costs requirements, and will also include an arrangement for use by the Harriers Athletics Club. The NFA will also have financial repairing and insurance responsibilities for the site. A contract variation will be required for the Freedom Leisure contract to remove these facilities from the existing leisure contract and end the lease with the Harriers Athletics Club. The concession contract, together with ancillary lease, will include the redevelopment of the associated pavilion subject to planning permission and a full or part relocation of Northamptonshire Football Association to the site from their existing premises. The project is a good opportunity for this council to realise investment in leisure provision in Kettering by attracting grant funding and working with the Northamptonshire Football Association to redevelop the artificial pitch, athletics track and pavilion to provide high quality and accessible facilities and delivery for the community. Thank you to the leisure team for their role in bringing this proposal forward. And with that, I'm delighted to propose the recommendations as outlined in section 3 of the report. However, I would like to make one minor amendment. At section 2.2 of the report, we've actually called it a 3D artificial football pitch. The use of the 3G rather, that is an error. Everywhere else, we refer to the pitch as having an artificial surface, which is the correct terminology for the type of surface. Thank you. So I'd now like to open it up for debates. Thank you. Councillor Edwards first.
Sorry, Lloyd.
I only saw you first.
Absolutely welcome this report. I know the area very well, and about 5 years ago I had the pleasure of switching on the floodlights on the athletic club. How will the other half live? I think it's a great opportunity. You know, the FA are experts in this field, and I'm not a football person myself, but it's really good to see that it's not just football that's included with this. It's a lot of other sports, including athletics. And I think it's great. It's great partnership working. It really is. And it's great that we can increase the sporting facilities that we've got within Northants and encouraging more and more people to get out there and participate in sporting activities. So I fully welcome this report.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I thoroughly welcome this. I think the pitch and the athletics track for a long time have been out on a limb away from the main estate that Freedom Leisure and before that Legacy Leisure and before that I've forgotten the one before that, never mind, used to manage. So as a consequence, I think that's one reason why it's fallen into disrepair. And it needs something doing to it. Not only do I welcome the fact that the Football Association want to fund it, but they want a permanent base there, and they want to take on the management, and that will only be very, very good for the people of Kettering and hopefully the rest of Northants.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. I think that concludes the debate, so thank you. I had the pleasure in moving the paper. I'd like to call for a seconder, please. Councillor Bundy, I thought you might be champing at the bit there. You can see that one. Thank you. The recommendations are set out on page 610 and 611 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please, may I see a show of hands in favour? Thank you. Thank you. Fabulous. All right, moving on. Item 11, sustainable modes of travel to school strategy. So I'd like to invite Councillor Dorothy Maxwell to address the meeting. Still 3 minutes, Councillor Maxwell, while I put my teeth back in. Thank you.
Hello. Modes of travel to school. Looking at transport to school, how much does it cost NNC in transport? Should we not consider public transport for years 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 and 12? What aspect do we encourage children to walk and cycle to school? How can we encourage parents to be more active instead of letting NNC get children to school? Clearly, some children need transport if there are SEND children or children with disabilities. but this should be at an access need. Most parents see independence for children. A healthy lifestyle encourages independence and a chance to mix with other children. Giving children a bus pass on a normal bus equally helps. Some schools are a distance from their home and they have little choice, but encouraging new cycle routes will encourage children to ride a bike to school. Schools will need to provide areas to lock up their bikes and keep them safe, also with lights. This report clearly shows that this report ensures that we maintain forward, but it does not explain the cost of transport or how many get the school bus. I would like to see this more clearer and more factual and explaining what NNC are doing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. I now call upon Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Still 3 minutes, Councillor Buckingham.
Thank you very much, and I know what you mean about the teeth in. I have problems there myself. I welcome this report. I welcome the consultation that it will bring about. However, the guidance is so new that the ink is still wet on it. And I would like some of the new guidance that's been brought out to be reflected within the consultation, so that parents understand what it is that they're doing on this. Sorry, not only my teeth but my throat. Excuse me. Things around the suitable schools and understanding where those come in, understanding that it's a partnership between the schools, the parents, and the local authority. Where commercial buses are possibly being planned, you need to think about there is at the moment, you pay £2 per journey, but children also pay £2 per journey. So we need to be looking at, if we're using commercial services, that there is a child fare as well as an adult fare, and not per child or adult. There needs to be the robust appeal process within the authority, so that parents can challenge if need be. And the whole thing around whether or not there's exclusion zones around schools, so that, you know, you go to one place or several places and sort of walk into the schools, which will save the chaos surrounding school timetables. And those are the only bits. It's just that bring the guidance in, the new guidance in for the consultation, and some of the other bits I've mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham. I'd now like to invite Councillor Scott Edwards, Executive Member for Children's, Families, Education and Skills, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Buckingham, I think you're getting a little bit confused with home-to-school transport and sustainable methods in getting to school. So we're not changing the home-to-school transport at all. It is as it is. So every child that goes to their first school choice that is nearest to their home will still get school transport to the school. So it doesn't affect that at all. And I just want to make that clear, that we are not taking away transport from children or making them pay if it is their first choice of school and the school that's nearest to their home. And indeed the same for SEND pupils as well. But I'm glad you welcome it. I think it's a great opportunity to actually look at how children get to school, because there are legal distances about how long they can walk for, and how they can get to school, and so this consultation will look at that. It's a 6-week consultation that will hopefully, if approved today, will run from the 14th of September to the 26th of October. So that's plenty of time during school holidays and also during school term as well, that will allow schools, pupils, parents, anybody to take part in this consultation. Northamptonshire Council are required to arrange free, suitable home-to-school transport for children of compulsory school age who are eligible to their nearest suitable qualifying school, in line with Section 508B of the Education Act. And that's what I was alluding to earlier in relation, we are not taking away school transport. Councillor Maxwell. The outline 4 main elements to promoting sustainable modes of transport, including the assessment and audit of sustainable travel options within the local authority, the development of a strategy for the promotion of sustainable travel to schools and other educational or training facilities. So they will include our colleges, our alternative provision, and everything else like that. Northamptonshire Council is required to produce and publish its annually Sustainable Mode of Transport to Schools strategy, commonly known as SMOTS. So the relevant policies that are covered through this are Better Brighter Futures, support schools to provide physical activity programme through our Healthier Schools programme, to promote sustainable active travel and low carbon technology, sustained and improved green infrastructure and sustainable forms of transport fit for the future. The engagement builds and facilitates a conversation about current and future journeys to education in the authority. It also ensures the more effective development, adoption and delivery of the plan. You will see in Appendix A the Sustainable Travel to Education strategy, and the strategy sets 4 targets, which are children and young people aged 5 to 18 should average at least 16 minutes of moderate or vigorous, intensely physical activity every day. Every school should have a school travel plan by 2033, and all schools should have an AQ below WHO air pollution limits. 55% of primary school aged children walk to school by 2025. Every day, children, young people and their families pack bags, walk, wheel, cycle, get the bus, train or car to nursery, school or college, a ritual that bookends the school day. Travelling to nursery, school or college by walking, wheeling, bus or train is good for children's health, well-being and good for the environment. Walking, wheeling or cycling to school wakes up the mind and the body. It allows children to chat to family or friends and arrive healthily, refreshed and ready to learn. The walk to school with parents and carers also provides an opportunity for children to learn road safety skills in an interactive and safe environment. For most children, it is a preferred way to get to school. The whole community benefits with more children walk to school, from higher footfall for local businesses to tackling school parking issues, reducing traffic congestion and carbon emissions. Making a change to active and sustainable journeys is not possible for many people and requires all parts of the school community to support this type of travel. It requires local understanding and knowledge, considered measures and ongoing support to change to active and sustainable transport. This strategy sets out how we will work with others to encourage to travel to school or college in a healthy, sustainable and safe way. And this strategy is a living document and should be considered along the education, land use, travel and transport policies and strategies emerging or adopted by the Council. Nationally, we can see that even with the benefits, the number of children walking to school has remained relatively static, despite the government's target of 55%. The 2011 school census from NNC schools shows that 61% of pupils walk to primary school and 46% walk to secondary school, so we need to increase this. I move to the recommendations and I approve this.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. So I'd now like to invite member debate from the floor. Does anybody like to speak on this? Thank you. Councillor Binley. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really supportive of this paper, and of course, as Councillor Edwards has rightly pointed out, this is not anything to do with scrapping the home-to-school transport policy, and bearing in mind it was only back in July that I presented to this executive. Unfortunately, clearly it wasn't memorable enough for some individuals, so I apologise for that. And there was an awful lot of information contained within that paper, and it roughly also, and I'm sure Councillor Bunday would correct me here if I'm wrong, but the cost, Councillor Maxwell, of homeschool transport is approximately £15 million to this local authority. So that is exactly why we reviewed the homeschool transport policy, which hadn't been reviewed for over 10 years. But I'm really, really supportive of this in encouraging individuals to use other more active forms to get to school. As we all know, we do have a number of challenges with regards to schools and parking at peak hours. We are having some issues there with certain schools, which unfortunately does on occasion even involve the police because of how heated it can get with some parents. And the schools are working with us wherever possible to try and resolve these issues. And I think they will be very, very encouraged by this policy coming forward and really will want to work with us as a local authority. So I'm really, really supportive of this because I'm sure a lot of us will remember walking to school ourselves. I know I certainly do. So we weren't fortunate enough to have a second vehicle to drive us to school. So thank you very much, and I fully support this.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. I don't think there's anybody else supporting. I'd just like to sort of say that this council, by developing these LC whips and the Greenway and everything, just supports this paper fully. I mean, and getting everybody out and active is key, really. So thank you for bringing this paper, Councillor Edwards. And Mr. Goddard, sorry I demoted you there a bit. Nearly called you councillor. There we are. Okay, so I presume you've proposed the motion?
Yeah, can I just add just a couple of words?
Absolutely, if you'd like to.
And I think all three of those papers are really important. And I think it's really important that actually we start with our children, because it's our children that then move that on, that then teach their parents, that then encourage their parents and guardians to take part in it as well. So I think, I'm not saying my policy is, more important than the other, but I think all three link well in together, but it's always good to start with the young. Absolutely,
Totally agree. Thank you. So you have moved the paper. Councillor Binley, I thought you might second it, so I turn over my page. The recommendations are set out on page 626 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I see a show of hands in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, agenda item 12, the Chief Principal Social Worker Annual Report. I have no speakers on this, so I'd like to invite Councillor Helen Harrison, Executive Member for Adults' Health and Wellbeing, to introduce that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is to present the Chief Principal Social Worker's annual report for the years 2022 to 2023. And I'm delighted to say that this is our second report, and I have Sarah Morris here with me today, our Chief Principal Social Worker. Last year, unfortunately, she couldn't be with us on the day we presented it, so David Watts presented in her absence. But today, Sarah is going to be able to give us a brief overview of that report, which is really welcome. And just to give you a little bit of context about Sarah's role, the purpose of her role is to lead, oversee, support and develop excellent social work practice, and in turn lead the development of excellent social workers and social care practitioners. The Care Act also states that she is required to prepare an annual report to look at the year that's just been, and also to set challenges for the coming year. So I'm going to pass over to Sarah. I'm delighted to introduce her to you all, and she's going to tell you a bit about her report and I think highlight some of the areas of progress and some of the areas that are still a little challenge to us. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Good morning, everybody. As Councillor Harrison explained, the annual report is an opportunity for me to report on reflections on the past year, the progress we've made and also the challenges we've faced and the priorities that we have for the coming year. It's very much, it's my report on the work that I and colleagues have done within adult social care. So the report lays out a number of areas. So obviously, given my role, learning and development is a very important one, and the report reflects back on the achievements over the last year. We work with a number of universities on accredited courses. So 3 social work apprentices have recently concluded their degree and qualified as social workers. We have 5 who are now a year through their degree course, and 5 who we, over the last year, recommended to go forward, and they will be beginning their degree in the next few weeks. We also have courses with universities for more specialist roles, so our approved mental health professionals, our best interest assessors and our practice educators, who are so vital in supporting student social workers going forward, that they train with universities and we support them. And then there are the less formal courses, so I work closely with learning and development colleagues to agree what's required for adult social care, but also provide bite-sized learning myself or link in with other colleagues to come in and provide that training for social workers and social care workers. I've worked very closely, particularly with housing colleagues over the last year, around supporting them with their use of the Mental Capacity Act, and following a Safeguarding Adults review, have worked very closely with colleagues in housing to deliver training across our social care and housing colleagues, supporting them with supporting people who experience multiple exclusion homelessness. I chair a social worker development group as part of our professional development steering group, and we work together to develop the learning that social care workers require, and we've put in place a practice audit. So monthly now, managers across adult social care will audit the work on a particular case and talk with the worker about the work they've done, measuring it against a number of questions, so that we understand the quality of work that we're providing. I'm responsible for supporting our social workers. Over the last year, we had Lynn Romeo, who's the Chief Social Worker for England, come and meet with colleagues, and that was really great. You know, social workers talked about their work, and she was very impressed by what she heard, and you could see the boost that gave to workers' morale in terms of that feedback. I will support social workers with individual case advice, so people may ring me and say, oh, Sarah, this is a really tricky situation. Or I will support managers who are having concerns about some HR concerns. And I'm our single point of contact with Social Work England, because obviously social work is a registered profession. I chair the Learning and Development Group for the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board, which obviously fits very nicely with the rest of the comments I've made about learning and development. And then the other big area of work has been around developing our strength-based practice. So we want to work in a way that is much more strength-based, that puts people at the centre of what we're doing, that sees their strengths, whether they be about the strengths they themselves have or the networks that they have within their community, which I think fits quite nicely with the conversations we've already had today, about people being part of that community and being able to draw on resources for that community, not necessarily needing adult social care because that support is there within the community. So I work very closely with the teams to develop our ways of working and improve our strength-based working. And across the East Midlands, we've developed a practice framework. So this lays out how we would want to work as adult social care for the people of Northamptonshire. And I and colleagues have reviewed what we developed in the East Midlands and made that more relevant to Northants. So what you will see is our vision in Northants and our behaviours threaded through that alongside the social care ones that the East Midlands had developed. And we've rolled that out across our teams. So I think the things we've been really pleased about in the last year is that the feedback that we got from the local government association's annual social work health check showed that actually our performance, the way our workers had graded us in terms of how well we meet the standards for employers of social workers, had gone up. And I was particularly pleased to see that people felt we were providing much more continual professional development than they'd previously felt. The one area which didn't do so well was around workloads, and we know that that's a challenge in adult social care. It's one that we're working on very, very closely, and the SLT have work in progress about reviewing our structures to ensure that we support workers to be able to have manageable caseloads and to better support the people of Northants. Into the future, the next year, I think the two big priorities are going to be about assurance. So we've got our practice audits in place, but we need to develop that further. We need to be much clearer about understanding how well we're doing and to be able to report back on what we're doing about that. And that will be particularly important as the Care Quality Commission begins its assessment of local authorities and the provision of adult social care. And I think the other big area will be about co-production. So about working with the people of Northamptonshire to develop our services and about hearing back from them about how well we're doing and then using that to continue to further improve our services. But in conclusion, I think we've seen adult social care come a really long way across 2022 and 2023. And I think the prospects for the future are really good. I'm really pleased. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very positive to hear. Delighted. Councillor Harrison, I presume you wish to come back. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so pleased that Sarah was able to be here with us today to deliver her own report, because it's much more powerful coming from the person behind the report and who knows it so intimately and clearly is so passionate about her role. And I think overall it's a really positive report. I think the information that Sarah was giving to you about the official training programs that people are going through and the sort of more bite-sized chunk bits of learning that people are doing is just so important in us growing our own. It's, you know, the future of this council is very much going to be dependent on us having a really successful programme of developing our own staff and our own social workers. So that was really great. The LGA feedback, I think, again, was hugely positive, that the people working in adult social services, our social workers, have a better experience working in this organisation than they did the previous year. It's always really important that we take that feedback. The one element that wasn't, you know, as positive, the workload, as Sarah says, is very familiar to us. We understand that and are working really hard to overcome that in a time of increased need. So, you know, it's great that we're clear-eyed about where some of those challenges are. I think we're clear about where we are. I think we're very clear about where we want to go. And just to highlight the real importance of some of the work that Sarah's doing in helping us to be ready for our CQC inspections. It's not just about being able to get a good rating. The good rating comes because we're giving a good service. So, you know, that's what's vital. It's the service we're providing and the work we're doing that matters. And getting a good CQC rating is about reflecting that. And Sarah's really instrumental in helping us to get ready for that and making sure that the good practice is in place. So thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for all your hard work this year. Look forward to hearing the next report next year. Oh, and I move the recommendations that we accept and note this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Yes, I think all of this executive echo Councillor Harrison's feelings, and thank you very much for attending today. It's very positive, really, when you consider this council is really in its very much its infancy. just over a couple of years, and we're getting positive feedback like that. It can only be good, can't it, moving forward? So I'm going to open it to the floor for debate now. Councillor Brackenbury. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Chair. And thank you, Sarah, for a really interesting report. It's not an area I'm a huge expert in, so actually the clarity and easy reading of that report shows, explains it quite well to a non-specialist. So thank you for that. I think, a lot of this is down to morale and the way that your team is sort of taking on the challenges, and of course there are challenges, but they're taking it on in a positive spirit. They're obviously well led. I'm so pleased you were able to get the Chief Social Worker for England down, because you're absolutely right. That sort of interaction really does bolster the whole team. And, I'm just, delighted to see the breadth of this report, because you've got challenges, you're grasping some of the difficulties, but you're acknowledging them and working to mitigate them where you can, as well as celebrating the positives. So, I'm so pleased you came to talk to us today, and keep up the good work, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Are there any further comments from members? Obviously, we're really happy and delighted with your report, so I shall now move it forward. Thank you, Councillor Harrison, for moving. I'd like to call for a seconder. I thought Councillor Brackenbury. The recommendations are set out on page 668 of the agenda. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I see a show of hands in favour? Thank you very much. Thank you. Right, moving on. Agenda item 13, energy procurement contract. We have no speakers on this, so I would like to invite Councillor Matt Binley, Executive Member for Highways, Travel and Assets, to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This report is seeking approval to secure a new energy broker contract through the procurement process, with the intention of harmonising our energy supply across the whole of our estate from the 1st of October 2024, running until September 2028. This will be using a PBO, which is a public buying organisation under a fully managed service. Forgive me if I say that wrong later. I really struggle doing the PBO for some reason. We've inherited various energy supply contracts from previous councils. These contracts expire, not surprisingly, in September 2024, and harmonising these contracts will allow us to obtain value for money. Currently, we are using 2 PBOs for the procurement of gas and electricity. All of the previous councils used an organisation called Laser, although they had different arrangements. That is apart from the previous Sovereign Authority of Kettering Borough Council, who used Eastern Shires Purchasing Organisation. By continuing to use a PBO, they can procure at better prices, invest in and retain the resources to provide energy monitoring and advice, and have a proactive, knowledgeable resource to monitor accounts and challenge utility providers on the council's behalf. The report does contain a considerable amount of information on how the function of a PBO works, and I won't try to summarise this in my report, otherwise we'll be here for a considerable amount of time. In sections 5.14 to 5.16 of the report, it discusses the issues and choices around renewable energy. That's namely the renewable energy guarantees of origin. There have been recent reports and criticism concerning the guarantee, in that on days of low wind and solar power generation, the electricity comes from fossil fuel sources instead. The cost of entering into such a scheme would be significantly more expensive to this local authority. That is approximately £500,000 per annum more expensive. It is proposed not to purchase such a scheme and instead explore options for direct investment into other energy projects which can offset NNC's carbon footprint, such as energy efficiency projects or retrofitting our buildings with renewable energy sources. 5.19 of the report details the benefits of purchasing a fully managed service. The proposal has been reviewed by the Sustainable Communities EAP. Their observations are contained in the report under section 7.6.1, but I would note that they were also concerned as well about the renewable energy guarantees of origin. So they did raise concerns about the possibility of entering into one of those. Therefore, Chair, I'd like to move the recommendations made out in section 3.1, that's A to D, for the reasons set out in section 3.2. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binley. I'm just looking around the floor. Does anybody wish to speak on the paper? No? Okay, thank you. I think that's pretty comprehensive. Thank you. So thank you for you moving the paper. I'd now like to call for a seconder, please. Oh, Councillor, I forgot your name. Councillor Bundy. I forget he sat over there. He's just in the corner there. Councillor Bundy, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 684 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. May I see a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you. Sorry, Lord. Oh, thank you. Right, moving swiftly on. Agenda item 14, the establishment of a North Northamptonshire Standing Advisory Council for Religious Education, or SACRE as it's called. We have no speakers on this, so I'd like to invite Councillor Scott Edwards, Executive Member for Children's, Families Education and Skills, to introduce the report. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. And this is quite a straightforward report. So a couple of months ago, you will remember that we brought the SACRE annual report to the Council. And this is to separate the North and the West. So the North has their own SACRE Council. Just brief background, the SACRE Council is those that look at religious education that is taught in schools and deals with any complaints and issues that arise from that. It is a group that meets for many different denominations of religion and none, and includes also councillors from this council. So it makes perfect sense to set up our own, because we have our own schools in the North, that we should set up our own SACRE. So I move this report.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Are there any comments from the floor? No? I understand that this was a desire for both councils to go down this route as well. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much. So thank you for moving the report. I'd now like to call on a seconder, please. Councillor Harrison, thank you. The recommendations are set out on page 694 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. May I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So, next item, agenda item 15, budget forecast for 23-24 at period 4. So, I would like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting. Councillor Lee, the usual 3 minutes. Thank you.
Another executive budget forecast, another overspent by the Children's Trust. This report contains a warning. Worse is still to come. 5.24 million potential overspend if the savings are not delivered. This is so frustrating because we do not seem to have that under control. So it would be remiss of me to draw your attention to it. I know you're already looking at it, but is there nothing else we can do to try and manage this? Because it will be the downfall of this council if we don't get it under control. Secondly, I wanted to talk about the last 3 pages of the report, a list of Appendix A, a list of savings. That's very confusing for people who are not experts in finance. We're talking about already the first point, additional resources. How are they savings? We're talking about case management system and telephony replacement. That's normally expensive. How can that be a saving? Call a spade a spade. Is that because you're making customer service officers redundant? Also, in adult health and partnership and housing, savings from a review of the wider staffing budget to fund social worker market forces. What is behind that? I remember in the social workers report, the report we've just listened, she drew attention on page 677 to that scores under the standard on safe workloads and case allocation have dropped. If teams were fully staffed, they would be better placed to manage the workloads. So are we making cuts in recruiting social workers? Maybe I misunderstand it, but we could do with more clarity on here to understand where are these cuts made, because when you tighten the budget, councillors hear the pips squeak from their workload, their caseload. I mean, and I know the demand in social services is increasing, so I'm concerned about where exactly these cuts are made. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Now I'd like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. 3 minutes again. Thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully I won't have to dash off because I've got a doctor's appointment shortly. There were only two things that I was going to raise. One, the overspend of 4 million for the dedicated schools grant and mitigating for that. Obviously, coming on top of the Children's Trust overspend, it's a concern, and obviously we'll need to keep an eye on that. And again, for the Appendix A, the savings, are they savings or are they? Are you shoehorning cuts into those bits and pieces, and what will that mean for our residents? I know we've got to make savings because we need a balanced budget. But again, it's the quality of services against, you know, a cost of doing something or a cost of not doing something. And the support that people need, obviously, through some of the services that we provide. And that's all I'm going to say on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Buckingham, and I hope you managed to get to your appointment on time. Thank you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bundy, Executive Member for Finance and Transformation, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. On the some of the cost savings that Councillor Lee was talking about, basically by design, by putting in the new telephone system, by amalgamating the 5 telephone systems we've got at the moment, which are traditional old analog type systems, into a new voice over IP digital system, there will inevitably be savings within that. And same with the education system, the education reporting system. The one that we've got is outdated and doesn't actually do exactly what we want it to do. The new one does, and that will in itself generate savings. As far as your other comments, could I ask you to drop me a line and I will get the relevant portfolio holder to answer those questions for you. As far as the DSG, £4 million, Councillor Buckingham, I refer to that in my comments in a moment, so I'll leave that for that. Can I just say, though, that as far as savings and cost avoidance goes, this council is required by law, unlike the NHS, and unlike things that come through the DSG, we have to, by law, have a balanced budget. And that does, at times, means that we have to make difficult decisions. And those are things that we, unfortunately, have to do. Moving on to the report, this report provides commentary on the Council's forecast for the revenue outturn position 23-24, based on information available as at period 3, which was July 2023. The forecast position for each of the funds is as follows. The General Fund, an overspend of £7.354 million. Housing Revenue Account, an overspend of £16,000. And Dedicated Schools Grant is forecasted an overspend of £4 million. The monitoring report sets out the material financial issues identified since the 23-24 budget was set in February and is based on emerging data and represents the views of budget holders and assistant directors. We will continue to assess and refine the forecasts on a regular basis using the latest intelligence available. Uncertainty remains on the level of pay award for staff. The NJC pay award, which is applicable to majority of our council staff, is yet to be agreed. The forecast overspend of £7.354 million for the General Fund is against a net budget of £337.072 million. This is a favourable movement of 4.93 for from period 3, where the pressure was some £7.847 million. The main movements between periods 3 and 4 are as follows. Children's £119,000 adverse movement, and the main movement results in the Children's Trust, where the forecast pressure has increased from £22.186 million to £22.954 million, an increase of £768,000, and results in a pressure of £339,000 for this council. Adults, £750,000 adverse movement. The main movement being £950,000 resulted from spend in relation to third-party payments in independent care spend, including residential and nursing care for both 65s and over 65s and below. The service is seeing a significant increase in demand. Client numbers have increased since April 2022 by 25% in the over 65s and 15% in the 18 to 64s, with costs similar to the existing users. This is partially offset by delivering other contractual efficiencies of £200,000. Public Health and Communities sees a £100,000 adverse movement, and the main movement there resulting from supplies and service costs, which are currently forecasting a pressure of £100,000, and this is mainly due to contractual increases. Place, £874,000 favourable movement. The main movement results from the reduction in pressures from utility costs of £500,000, an increase in planning income of £198,000, and a reduction in running costs of £105,000. Enabling has seen a £35,000 adverse movement, and the main movement results from the increase in insurance premiums of £300,000 and an additional cost in coroner's service of £41,000. Corporate costs has seen a favourable movement of £623,000, and that is a further favourable movement forecast from investment income following the increase in Bank of England base rates. The Council's overall outturn forecast for the Housing Revenue Account as of period 4 is a forecast overspend of £16,000 against an approved budget of £38.752 million. The details of the movement against budget are set out in the report at section 6. The Council's overall outturn forecast for the Designated Schools Grant as at period 4 is a forecast overspend of £4 million against a net spend of £121.2 million. In the financial year 22-23, this council reported an overspend of £1.8 million on the higher needs block. This was offset against a historical surplus of £2.5 million that had been brought forward from previous years, leaving a reserve balance of £700,000. This year's pressures have continued to increase, and it is now forecast that the higher needs block overspend will be around £4.7 million. The remaining reserves have been used to mitigate this, leaving a forecast overspend of £4 million. However, the net overspend for 23-24 is not dissimilar to 22-23 when adjusting for one-off pressures of £1 million, and the decision not to request the Schools Forum to agree to a transfer from the schools block to the higher needs block of £1.7 million would have resulted in the pressure being around £2 million. Further details of the movements against budget are set out in the report at section 7. Like many councils, the main issues, risks and unknowns that we continue to face are around the inflationary impact and changes within demand-led services. We recognise that this is and will continue to be a challenging time, but we will be working hard to balance our finances while protecting vital services, particularly those to our most vulnerable residents. With that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendation at paragraph 3.
Thank you, Councillor Bundy. I'd like to now invite member debate from the floor, and I have Councillor Harrison first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lee, for your questions regarding the specific saving that you noted in the report, which was around the review of wider staffing budgets to fund the social work at Market Forces Supplement. 2 years into being a new local authority, all departments have reviewed their staffing and their workforce, and as a result of that review, there had been some savings made. £100,000 worth of those savings was put towards funding the social worker Market Forces Supplement, very specifically to make sure that we don't lose social workers and we maintain our workforce. Really, really important, because we know that we need to pay our workforce well in order to keep them in this authority and to be an employer of choice. So just to assure you that that's actually about keeping staff, not losing staff. But it would be remiss of me to not mention the fact that adult social care is showing pressures that Councillor Bundy pointed out a moment ago, with demand increasing across the board. So as Councillor Bundy said, our 18 to 64-year-olds, we're seeing an increased pressure of 15% in people coming forward with care needs, and in older adults, the over 65s, it's 25%. That's an unprecedented increase in demand. So the potential clearly is for further pressures on adult social care, and it's absolutely vital that we mitigate that, because as Councillor Bundy pointed out, we're not able to just spend willy-nilly. We have to come in budget. So some very urgent work is being done across adult social care to understand why those pressures are developing, if there's anything we can do to mitigate those pressures and how we manage that. So just to assure, and of course, inflation has affected us in more than we expected this year as well with our contracts. So we're working very hard to make sure that we keep control of our budget, and it may mean that hard decisions do have to be made, but the most important thing is that we deliver really good care to the residents of North Northamptonshire, and that must remain our focus.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Yeah. Councillor Edwards, next to you.
Thank you, and just to address Councillor Lee, I absolutely share your frustration with the Children's Trust, and I know, and every member of the executive, I can speak on behalf of, because we've had many conversations regarding it. We are absolutely doing everything we possibly can to get behind the scenes of it and understand the overspend that is happening every quarter, every year. We are absolutely trying to get on top of it, but it is so frustrating. I have to sit there every week and explain why we are so much overspent, and yeah, it is difficult. And the education recording system is a legal system, so we have to have it by law. So it came up, I can't remember if it was you actually or whether it was Councillor Buckingham, but we brought it to the executive in August to approve, to go out to get it approved. But it will simplify things for parents and students more as well. But it is a legal piece of, I don't know how these things work, to be honest, whether it's actual machine or whether it's all in the air, but, which it probably is, but for that purpose. And the DSG block, £4 million overspent. If I give you part of the reason, and Lloyd did allude to it about the schools budget coming out of it, so we didn't ask them last year because we had got a surplus. We will be asking this year for, I think, is it 0.5%?
Yes.
I think it's 0.5%. But if I tell you also that we have 591 more EHCPs than we did this time last year. So that's why we have such an increase within the high needs block. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. I can't see anybody else hands raised. As I think I echo Councillor Edwards' frustration. I think this whole executive has great frustration in what's going on in the Children's Trust, and as he said, we are really trying to hold them to task now, aren't we? So yeah, it's worrying times. So thank you, Councillor Bunday. You move the report. I'd like to call for a seconder, please. Councillor Edwards, thank you. So the recommendations are set out on page 724 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please may I see a show of hands in favour. Thank you. So urgent items of business. I've received no requests to consider any urgent items of business at this time, other than Councillor Scott Edwards would just like to raise a point, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It would be really remiss of me to talk about Anne-Marie Dodds. Unfortunately, Anne-Marie can't be here today because of a family issue, but this would have been her last executive meeting within the council, and because we don't have a full council before she does leave, I have a few words to say from the leader. So, firstly, apologies for not being able to attend today's executive and deliver this message in person. I wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to Anne-Marie for her hard work and commitment to the council, her staff, council members, and most importantly, everyone in North Northamptonshire who the council serves. Being the Director of Children's Services at any local authority is not an easy job. Anne-Marie has carried out the role steadfastly, and her knowledge and experience has been invaluable to both myself and Jason and all the executive colleagues. Although Anne-Marie has been the Executive Director for Children's Services at the Council since March 2022, she worked as Assistant Director before that and has been instrumental in a safe transition of Children's Services from Northamptonshire County Council to North Northamptonshire Council, which will have been no easy feat. Through Anne-Marie's professional leadership, we have seen the Council secure significant levels of funding to help develop family hubs in the area. We have seen school upgrades and capital improvement works, improvements to SEND provision, and importantly, a range of measures and initiatives that put the Council in a stronger position to move forward. And as Anne-Marie moves on to another role as Executive Director of Children's Services, she leaves the service in a good position for a successor to pick up from. Thank you, Anne-Marie, and I'm sure all my colleagues will join me in wishing you the best in your new role. And I just wanted to add that Anne-Marie has been a great deal of strength to me, actually, since she's taken over. And I've learnt so much since being in this role the past 2.5 years. And I thank her for everything as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. And I see plenty of nodding heads around this chamber to agree exactly with what you've just said. It's fantastic when we have such a great team of staff, and she moves on to other things that suit her personally, so that's what we have to think about. But I'm sure we will continue her good work as we move forward, and as I said, everybody wishes her all the very best for the future. So thank you on that. That concludes the business of the agenda, and I thank those members, officers and the public who have been in attendance, including those who have